Hello, Malcolm here, and welcome to Tuesday Teaching Tips, episode 284. And today we're asking the question, what has church history to do with preaching and teaching? Is it relevant? So I'm in the last stages of preparation for the Athens Institute of Ministry for the UK and Ireland module that's coming up this coming Saturday. It's on church history. I'm recording this a few days beforehand. The module is on the 3rd of December 2022. If you're coming, great. If you'd like to come, please sign up. I'm putting the link in the show notes. And even if you can't come on the 3rd, you could still take part in the module by signing up, and then you can watch the recordings afterwards online and all the material that goes with it. So I'd recommend you do that. But what does church history have to do with preaching and teaching? I believe this, and I'm going to give you a statement. I'm going to try and justify it. You can tell me what you think. Church history helps us in, well, many different ways, but I'm going to give you one today. Church history helps us separate pragmatism and tradition from core teachings, and thus it helps unity and prevents unnecessary division. I'll give you that sentence one more time. Church history helps us to separate pragmatism and tradition from core teachings, and thus it helps unity and prevents unnecessary division. So let me offer you one thought as an example based on the book Renewing God's People by Holloway and Foster. Fascinating book. You can see it on screen if you're watching the video. A concise history of the churches of Christ. One of the books as the background for this module that we're going to be teaching on Saturday the 3rd. So the churches of Christ, if you don't know, have been traditionally non-instrumental. And indeed, churches have divided over the issue of whether to allow instruments to be part of Sunday worship or not. Where does that come from? So the lack of instruments in the movement, according to the book, was not initially a scriptural issue. It was probably more to do with the frontier nature of the beginnings of the Restoration movement in the 1800s, where you didn't have many church buildings, and those that you didn't have instruments in them, or the buildings used didn't have instruments in them, and instruments were very expensive. And so therefore the churches at that time developed the, I suppose you could call the habit of singing without any instrumental accompaniment. It says this in the book on page 93. The first recorded instance of an instrument used in worship among the Stone Campbell churches was in Midway, Kentucky in 1859. The minister, L.L. Pinkerton, brought in a melodeon. Why did he do that? He brought in a melodeon to help singing that was so bad it, and I quote, scared even the rats from worship. It scared even the rats from worship. So instruments from that point on began to be used after the Civil War in the United States, mostly in the north of the country, and the northern churches justified them on the grounds of appealing to a new generation of worshippers. It was going to be helpful and to help singing generally. The southern congregations opposed instruments on the grounds of waste because they're very expensive, especially when Southern Christians were living in such deprivation. A lot of them were starving after the Civil War, and it seemed that the North was being indulgent financially when they could be helping their brothers and sisters in the South. And they also accused the North of accommodating to culture, just trying to fit in and not standing out. And you can hear similar accusations today, can't we? Two different approaches to worship. Why was this issue so much more divisive than any other? It's not the only issue that the churches disagreed on, but it was one of the most divisive. Perhaps, the book speculates, because it's so visible. You can see the instrument if it's there or not, and of course you can hear the difference. But did it need to divide people? Now, we may have preferences for singing with or without instruments, and personally I prefer a blend of both. However, I cannot justify one position over the other from Scripture. Nor do I, more importantly, feel the need to do so. So what's the application here to preaching and teaching? Not so much about the particular issue of instrumental music or whatever, but more about the way that we approach areas that could be divisive. Well, it's helpful to see an example here of how a practice, non-instrumental worship, developed as a practical outworking of circumstances on the frontier in the United States, instruments expensive, and was challenged then by new circumstances. Greater wealth in the northern churches, a desire to appeal to the culture and connect with perhaps a new generation of worshippers, and then was given theological justification after the fact, and then came division. So do you and I have practices that we can justify from Scripture? I mean, the argument from silence is that there's nothing in the Bible about instruments, therefore we shouldn't use them. It does say in chapter 14 of 1 Corinthians and verse 26, each of you has a hymn. In other words, they seem to bring a hymn and they sing it together. It seems they didn't have instruments, so therefore we shouldn't, we mustn't, or we should consider the value of non-instrumental singing, but does it have to be an issue that's divisive? That's really the issue here. So do we have issues that we can justify from Scripture, but separate us from other Christians and have their origins in pragmatism, which became established tradition, and then acquired, finally, theological justification? It must never be that a preacher or a teacher presents a pragmatic solution as a biblical imperative. I wonder what your thoughts are on this. I would really like to know your thinking on it. And if you can identify other issues that you think have come about by this kind of means, pragmatism leading to tradition, and then finding a theological or biblical justification, and then potentially, or perhaps even in real life, causing division. So we're going to be examining issues like this in the Athens Institute of Ministry for the UK and Ireland module on church history, which we're going to be doing this coming Saturday, the 3rd of December. Sign up at the website if you'd like to attend. You can come in person in Reading in the UK. It'd be great to see you physically there. Or you can attend online. Either way, sign up at aimukанdireland.com. Again, the link will be in the show notes. Leave any comments you want to on this topic. I'll be really interested to read them. Please leave them publicly so that we can learn from each other, because we learn best when we're learning in community. If you know anybody that might benefit, please pass the link on, subscribe, hit the notification button. If you'd like a booklet on spiritual disciplines that I've written, sign up for my newsletter at the website malcolmcox.org. You can email me at malcolm@malcolm@malcolmcox.org. That's the right one. Well, I hope you found that interesting. I'd like to know your thoughts. So, until the next time, keep calm and carry on teaching. Take care and God bless.